Border of the Forbidden Regions. 31 solar days after leaving the Republic Hive world. 6,185 light-years from Earth. 2175 AD. The command drone watched with increasing anxiety as more Guardian ships continued to flash out of null space and encircle the rescue Hive ship. They were already surrounded by 6 Hive ships and over a dozen cruisers, and another 8 cruisers flashed out and completed the encirclement as they covered all possible avenues of escape. The animal command soldier started making noises that seemed angry, and she looked at the holograms that appeared in front of the animal's thorax, trying to make sense of the fast-moving claw signs. "Luna, do not panic. Remember what we planned for if this happened? Do you have the focuser with you?" Luna, who readily accepted the name the animal had given her during their journey here, looked towards the machine animal and made claw signs, trying to clamp down on her panic. The android turned towards the animal command soldier and started making noises as it translated Luna's claw signs. "Captain Bader, Luna says she has the focuser, and she wants to know what she should do. I think she is panicking, sir." "I can see that, Giscard. Tell her to relax and just do as we planned for the last damn 30 days. She needs to use the focuser and bullshit her way through. That's all there is to it." The android turned back to Luna and signed to her as it replied to Captain Bader. "The closest insectoid analog to bullshit is aphid droppings. Should I use that, sir?" Captain Bader groaned in frustration at the android's ridiculous question and walked over to where Luna was standing on the raised command dais. Luna felt herself losing control as the machine animal and the animal command soldier kept making noises at each other while the machine animal confused her with claw signs that made her think of aphid waste. The animal soldier stepped in front of her. After making a loud noise to the machine animal, it stopped making claw signs to her, and she turned her attention to the animal. The animal soldier started to make softer noises to her, and she focused intently as the holographic claw signs made noises into thoughts. "Tilda Luna. Remember why we are here and what the Hive Mother wants you to do. Do not think of anything else. You are Luna, sister of Aurora, and her envoy. Act like it, and do not let them stop you." Luna saw the animal thoughts in her mind as she watched the claw signs, and she felt the first touch of calmness taking hold of her as the animal thoughts helped her to fight down her fear and anxiety. She was here for her Hive Mother, and she had a task to fulfill. She sent a thought to a waiting nearby drone, and it came over holding a small box. The animal command soldier watched her as she took the box and removed the focuser, and it grimaced at her as she gently held the delicate crystallized latticework imbued with the Hive Mother's essence. She placed it on the platform next to her and made claw signs at the machine animal. It turned away from her and made noises to the animal command soldier, sharing her thoughts with him. "Captain Bader, Luna says she can already feel the thoughts of the command drone here wanting to share thoughts. She wants us to go over to the far wall and remain there out of sight in case she must use the viewer to show the focuser and assure our passage." "Okay, Giscard. We will go over there and stay out of sight. Please tell her that she's got this, and I have faith that she will get us through this and on our way." Captain Bader replied before heading over to where Luna wanted them. Giscard signed to Luna, telling her what the captain had said to it before walking over to the far wall to join him. Luna watched them as they took positions along the far wall of the command chamber and out of view of any of the screens that could transmit images to the other ships. She could feel the thoughts of the command drone in control of the ships that intercepted them, and she resisted the thought commands for immediate compliance. Luna made sure that they were where they were supposed to be before opening her mind slightly to the command drone thoughts. It seemed like a regular command drone like her, not one of the specialized ones she was warned about. She could immediately feel a mind trying to force its way into her thoughts, and she denied it access as she held the mental intruder at bay. "Why are you here? Give me access to your thoughts. No, you will not violate me like this. I am here at the command of the Hive Mother." Luna felt the presence back off slightly, unsure of herself now. She also felt disbelief at her thoughts, and she readied herself for what was coming next. It made it a little easier for her, the fact that there were 2 Hive Mothers, so there was no real falsehood in her thoughts. "Give me access to your thoughts to verify your claim." "No, I'm the envoy of the Hive Mother, and I am here at her command. Do you deny me passage, or shall I inform the Hive Mother that the command drones here think themselves as queens? Maybe she will send a daughter queen here and cull you for such arrogance." The presence immediately stopped trying to force its way into her mind, and she felt the first signs of hesitation in the thoughts of the command drone. She also felt a slight alarm at her threat, and she sent more thoughts to take advantage of the fear of being culled. "Why have you stopped me? You are here to guard the forbidden areas, not to deny passage to your sisters. Why are you not watching for the persecutors of the queens?" "We have found a large animal ship here, and we attacked it. It killed many of us, and we now look for more signs of the animals that escaped. We saw your ship flash out and came to see if you were animals or something else." Luna felt the anger of the command drone's thoughts. They had one task and they had failed at it. She quickly thought of a way to use the information to her benefit and take advantage of the disruption the animals they were here to rescue had caused. Luna allowed a small amount of disbelief and arrogance to tinge her thoughts as she sent them. "Animals here? I thought you removed the animal presence from this region many cycles ago. Perhaps you and your sisters missed some." "We removed the animal infestation entirely. We did not leave any alive. We had never seen this type of ship before or the type of animal within it. This is another invasion." The doubt in the command drone's thoughts was palpable, and she detected worry of an animal invasion, which would explain their refusal to allow her passage so far. She had to get past them before one of the specialized drones arrived. "You will grant me passage and allow me to proceed with my task. Tell your ships to move out of the way." The response was immediate. "No, you will remain here until the commander drone arrives. No ships are allowed into the forbidden regions without their permission." She felt her anxiety come back, and she responded with her thoughts, allowing her anger to bleed through. "So the command drones here do think they are queens. I will inform Hive Mother that her command drones have been out here too long and have forgotten their place. She will cull all of you, and you will be replaced with drones that know their proper place within the hives." There was another flash of fear from the command drone, and she felt like she could force her way through if she pushed a little harder. "I will contact the Hive Mother right now. Remain here. I am accessing the focuser now." Luna felt a wave of terror in the command drone's thoughts, and the prior arrogance that was within them disappeared as she immediately replied to her. "You have a focuser. Why did you not notify me immediately of this?" She thought furiously for a moment and decided to take a chance with another falsehood as she replied with her thoughts. "Hive Mother sent me here to ensure that you have not forgotten who rules the hives." It appears she was right. "I was instructed to come here and test if you would obey her after being here and outside of her influence for so long." The wave of terror grew stronger, and Luna detected the anguish of the command drone's thoughts as her loyalty and obedience were questioned. She felt bad for the command drone as she suffered from the implication of disloyalty, and she forced herself to ignore it as the command drone replied with thoughts heavy with grief. "I am loyal to Hive Mother. I have been here for 43 cycles. I have not been inside a hive since I first came out of my pupa. I have not shared in the thoughts of billions of my sisters. I have not traveled through the hives and come to know their sense or the touch of their legs and antennae. I will not receive gratitude and permission to eternally rest when my time comes." Luna felt the anguish and turmoil within the command drone's thoughts, and she regretted having to commit a falsehood and make her think that the Hive Mother thought she was a disloyal drone. "You are my sister. If you let me pass, I will tell Hive Mother that you are loyal and ask her to allow you to go back with me and live out the rest of your life in a hive with your sisters." She felt a surge of happiness from the command drone as she received her thoughts, and she knew she had achieved her task. "Yes, sister, I am loyal. I will inform the others to allow you to pass and go on your way." Luna felt euphoric at having succeeded in getting passage, and she started to excitedly make claw signs to the machine animal, when she saw another hive ship flash out of null space and assume position right in front of her ship. She felt as if the command drone was abruptly pushed out of the way, and a new presence made itself known. She felt the new mind try to force its way in, and she could barely resist the power behind it as it sent thoughts. "Why are you here? Submit and open your thoughts to me." It took all her mental strength to resist the urge to immediately comply with the compelling thoughts of the newly arrived commander drone. She was almost as powerful as a young queen. This is what Hive Mother warned her about. She was already exhausted from her barely successful effort to stop the invading presence, and she struggled to respond. "No, I am here as an envoy of the Hive Mother. You will not violate me." Luna felt the powerful mind back off slightly, though she was still trying to access her thoughts. "You will comply." She looked at the machine animal and the animal command soldier, feeling her anxiety and fear threatening to return and overwhelm her. She tried to bluff her like she did with the command drone. "No, I am an envoy of the Hive Mother. Do you think of yourself as a queen and no longer required to obey her?" It did not work this time, and the mind was starting to push aside the mental blocks she had thrown up to deny access to her thoughts. She became desperate and sent another thought. "I have a focuser with me. Do I need to tell the Hive Mother that you refuse to obey her envoy?" The intruding presence withdrew slightly, and she felt thoughts coming from the powerful command drone. "Show me. Now." Luna looked at the far wall and held up a claw, indicating to the machine animal and animal command soldier that they were to remain where they were before sending a tired thought command for the worker drone in front of her to activate the viewer. The drone activated the viewer almost immediately, and Luna picked up the focuser and held it in front of her as she waited for the newly arrived Hive ship to make a connection with their viewer. The viewer flickered, and she saw the commander drone appear, easily identified by the pattern of colors on the exoskeleton and the bulbous presence of pheromone glands located under her ear holes. The commander drone stared at her, and she could see the presence of a powerful mind within the eyes. Luna also noticed that she was almost as large as a soldier drone, and the pheromone glands were almost twice the size of her own glands. She forced herself to remain still as the specially bred commander drone shifted her eyes to look at the focuser Luna was holding in front of her thorax. Thoughts came to Luna's mind. Why were you sent here if not to add another Hive ship to the Guardian swarm? Hive Mother has not sent us ships for over 2 cycles. Hive Mother took ships from here and did not return them. Why do you go into the forbidden regions? Luna struggled to think of more falsehoods, afraid that the powerful commander drone would detect them and attack. She thought of the animal command soldier insisting that they practice what the animals called lying during their journey here. Hive Mother told her to work with them, so she did. The concept had disturbed her, and she did not understand why the animal wanted her to say something was blue when it was really red, or that there were 3 drones when there were really 5. It had become easier for her to make falsehoods as time went on, and she began to see the deviousness of the animals as an advantage, not a wrongness if it was used for a correct purpose. Now she understood why the animal had wanted her to learn this new way of thinking false thoughts, and she was grateful she had time to practice making falsehoods. Luna had to make another falsehood combined with truth to obscure the falsehood from the powerful intelligence trying to stop her. We launched the 8th swarming against the animals, and we claimed many new worlds for hives. New animals came, destroying our swarms and taking the dead animal worlds back from us. A builder world was destroyed, and 4 of our queens were killed by the animals. Luna felt the shock from the commander drone as she told it mostly truth, and now it was time for false truths. Hive Mother knows of the animal ship you have found here. I am to look for them and bring them back as hostages. Hive Mother wants to see if these animals are the same as the ones that destroyed our swarms. Hive Mother also wanted me to test if the command drones are still loyal to her. There was an outpouring of distrust and suspicion from the commander drone, as well as anger. Powerful thoughts came to her, making her wilt under its mental assault. I do not believe you. You are telling truths and falsehoods. I was bred with a more powerful mind than your sister. Your attempts at deception will not work on me. Remain where you are. I will come to your ship and see if this focuser is real. I will cull you if you have been deceiving me. Panic seized Luna. She had failed her Hive Mother and will be culled along with the animals in the Hive ships when they are discovered. If the animals were not on the ship, she could let the commander drone come and see the focuser was real, and she could then perform her task. The commander drone will see the animal ships inside the Hive ship, and the ships surrounding her would destroy the rescue Hive ship. She did not know what to do, and she seized on her last chance. No, I will fire on any ships that try to access this vessel. I will contact Hive Mother now, and she will take me. You will know her wrath and be culled for presuming to stop her envoy. There was disbelief at her threat to fire on them, and she could feel the commander drone renew her attempt to overpower her mind. She fought off the intrusion, but she did not have much time. Luna lifted the focuser before her eyes and stared into it, feeling the echo of the Hive Mother's essence as she reached out to it. As the powerful mind of the commander drone continued to tear through her mental defenses, Luna cried out for help with her own essence, pleading for help from the Hive Mother. Her spirit fled the Hive ship, and she suddenly felt and saw herself hovering over the last focuser they had dropped before reaching the border, floating in deep space over 500 light-years away. Luna barely had time to realize what was happening when her spirit was hurled to the one dropped before the one she was just at. She was now over 1,000 light-years away, hovering over another focuser within a stellar nursery that was colored with beauty from the gases surrounding her. Luna could feel the essence of the Hive Mother getting stronger as she continued to leap back with her disembodied spirit. She hurtled through vast distances that defied her limited comprehension of time and space as she jumped back through the focusers they had dropped every 500 light-years since they left the Hive world. She was suddenly within a dim structure on a strange planet, floating above her Hive Mother. Hive Mother was making claw signs with the Animal Queen, and they were surrounded by the machine soldiers. The Hive Mother continued to make claw signs, and Luna reached out to her, letting her fear of failure and desperation for help emanate from her spirit. She saw a small point of light emerge from the Hive Mother's body and go to her, enveloping her with tender love and a warm glow that calmed her and promised safety while the Hive Mother continued to make claw signs with the Animal Queen. Luna made the journey back with the Hive Mother as they transitioned from one focuser to another, allowing herself to be cradled and borne by the Hive Mother's spirit. They reached the Hive ship, and Luna was back in her body, seeing out of her eyes as the Hive Mother took over and stopped the violation of the commander drone, violently ejecting the powerful mind. Luna looked at the time dial and saw that there was barely any elapsed time from when she had left to when they had come back. She could see out of her eyes and hear her thoughts, but she had no control of her own body. She was now inhabited by the Hive Mother, and she communed with her quickly, opening her mind entirely so that Hive Mother knew what had been happening. She could hear Hive Mother's much more powerful thoughts as if they were her own, and she remained in the partition the Hive Mother had put her in instead of subsuming her entirely. She watched the commander drone on the viewer reeling from the traumatic ejection as she rapidly contracted and expanded her abdomen, breathing heavily through her spiracles as she sagged under the brutal mental assault from the furious Hive Mother. "You dare to defy my envoy? I am Hive Mother. You are a commander drone. You make me come here when I have hives to look after? Do you think of yourself as a queen?" Luna could not hear the thoughts of the commander drone any longer, but she could see the effect the Hive Mother's powerful thoughts had on the commander drone as it reacted to her onslaught. The arrogant superiority that was present in her large black eyes disappeared and was replaced with abject terror. The commander drone deflated, and her antennae hung down limply as she struggled for air. "Bring your command drone to the viewer so it can see I am Hive Mother and within my envoy." The commander drone seemed to deteriorate even further, and she started to shake violently as the Hive Mother ravaged her mind in punishment for defying her envoy. A few moments later, a command drone like Luna appeared and saw the powerful presence of the Hive Mother in Luna's eyes. The command drone immediately bowed, awaiting commands from the Hive Mother. "Kill the commander drone, now!" Luna saw the command drone flinch from the anger within the thought command of the Hive Mother, and the command drone stood back up straight from bowing and held out a claw, waiting for something. A worker drone came half into view and placed a long dagger into the command drone's outstretched claw before scurrying out of sight of the viewer. The command drone turned around and faced the barely conscious commander drone, and without hesitation she surged forward and drove the dagger into the skull of the commander drone right between the eyes. She let go of the dagger and turned to face the viewer, her eyes filled with fear. Good. Do I need to call you too? Or will you let all your sisters and Commander Drones know what will happen if they defy my envoy and stop this Hive ship again? Luna did not hear the thoughts of the terrified command drone, but she did see her bow deeply before the viewer turned off on their end. Gentle thoughts from the Hive Mother came to her, and the partition that Hive Mother had built for her started to fade away. I will depart. I regret that you had to allow me to violate you. Go find our animal friends and bring them back to their hives. Do not allow any of your sisters or Commander Drones to stop you again. Luna responded quickly as she felt the Hive Mother starting to leave her body. Thank you, Hive Mother. I will not fail you again. I will bring our animal friends back. There was one last thought from the Hive Mother before she left her body and went into the focuser. I know you will. The focuser flared brightly before it started to pulse with an ethereal glow as the Hive Mother's spirit readied to begin the journey back home. After a few moments, it dimmed and returned to its barely luminescent glow. All that remained was the echo of the Hive Mother's essence, and Luna carefully placed the focuser on the platform next to her. She was just about to turn to the animal command soldier and the machine animal to have them approach her, when new thoughts reached out, respectfully asking for permission to share with her. The thoughts were from the first command drone who had agreed to let her pass, and she opened her mind to her sister. I regret that the commander drone did not have the wisdom to grant you passage and refused to acknowledge my request to respect you as envoy of the Hive Mother. Luna replied, letting her distaste for the demeanor of the haughty commander drone permeate her thoughts. I regret this as well. Are all the commander drones so arrogant? There was a noticeable hesitation before her sister responded with more thoughts. It is difficult for us here, sister. We have not had a Hive Mother come here for so long, not even to commune with us. The last contact we had was when Hive Mother ordered us to send ships back to the hives, and she used the focuser to relay the command and nothing else. There was a long pause, and Luna waited patiently for her sister to send more thoughts, feeling sadness at the grief and loneliness within them. Ships come and join us from the hives, and for a short time we rejoice in the addition of more sisters to share thoughts with. That wears off quickly, and we continue to guard the forbidden areas, condemned to spend the rest of our lives without knowing the joy of living in a hive. Luna felt a deep sadness at the thoughts of her sisters and their terrible fate of being disconnected from the hives as they waited for an ancient enemy that had not come for hundreds of cycles. Command drones and worker drones needed something to do. It was their whole reason for being. She could not fathom the agony of endlessly patrolling the same routes and waiting for something to happen. She replied with her own thoughts, feeling compassion for her sisters suffering such cruel fates. I must depart and do my task as commanded by Hive Mother. Perhaps I will share thoughts with you when I come back this way. There was a brief surge of joy at the possibility of sharing thoughts again, and the command drone responded quickly. That would make me happy. Will you take me back to the hives like you said you would, sister? I desire to know the joy of sharing thoughts and clasping claws with many sisters. I want to smell their unique scents and know their bodies with my antennae. I want to receive the gratitude and permission to rest before I die from a queen. Luna felt a deep regret for ever mentioning the possibility and giving her sister hope. It was wrong to have done so when she had no intention of ever honoring her promise. I will try, sister. If I can, I will take you with me. How do I prevent my hive ship from being stopped again? Hive Mother does not want any ships being diverted from their task. I am to go alone. The command drone responded with thoughts imbued with happiness at the prospect of returning to the Empire with Luna. Hive Mother instructed our sister, the one who killed the commander drone, to mark your ship as her personal ship. We will target your ship with a low-powered, wide dispersal beam from our particle weapons with the unique identifying radiation signature pulse Hive Mother provided. Please remain where you are. I will do it now. On the viewer, Luna saw one of the hive ships power up a single particle beam emplacement before firing rapid pulses with a widely dispersed beam that fluoresced over the entire ship. The command drone sent thoughts again when the pulses had stopped. "It is done. We will go and share thoughts of this ship and your mission, and we will send shuttles throughout the forbidden regions to notify our sisters of this radiation signature. None will interfere with the envoy of the Hive Mother. I eagerly await your return and for us to share thoughts again, sister." Luna responded, allowing her gratitude for her sister to be sent with her thoughts. "I thank you, sister. I too will enjoy sharing thoughts with you again. I will depart shortly." There was a flash of happiness from the command drone as her thoughts retreated from Luna's mind, and sadness from the falsehoods she had been telling her sister came over her as she instructed the worker drones to prepare to flash into null space. Luna indicated for the animal command soldier and the machine animal to come over to her, and she made claw signs to the machine animal that they were now proceeding on their task. As the animal and the machine animal made noises at each other, Luna turned her thoughts back to her sister and the false promises she had made to her. Her thinking changed, and she thought of ways to fulfill her promise. If they find the animal friends and rescue them successfully, she will come back here. Determination filled her thoughts and her spirit as she thought of many ways to save her sister from her cruel fate without jeopardizing her task. As the massive engines powered up, the Hive ship started thrumming from the power being fed into the null drive capacitors through the energy conduits. She sent the coordinates to the worker drone, showing a mental map of where she wanted to go and ordering the drone to flash out when ready. She ignored the others as they continued to make noises at each other, and she had a thought just before the Hive ship flashed out. "I will be back for you, my sister. I will turn my falsehood into a truth and take you back to the Hives if I can. You will know my Hive Mother, and you will know happiness." RSS James Donovan, 6,982 light-years from Earth, 2175 AD. 51 days after the destruction of the John Cabot, Captain Anthony Navarra rubbed his unkempt beard absent-mindedly as Davis finished updating him on the daily reports from the crew department heads. "So we are good on water, but food is going to start being an issue within a week. Is that what you are telling me, Davis?" he asked after the XO had finished his report on the ration situation. "Aye, Captain. I recommend that we go on half rations until we figure out what to do. That'll buy us an additional week, maybe a little longer," Davis replied, trying to hide his concern about the current state they were in. "What about the insectoid food? I thought the Aphids were still making that crap they poop out. Didn't the medics say that we could eat it if needed?" he asked, tapping on the datapad and running some numbers on the rationing of the food supply. Davis hesitated for a few moments before replying. "They were, sir. For some reason they stopped shitting a couple of days ago, and now there is only enough to feed Indigo for the next week or so." Navarra shook his head at the mention of the drone and the name that was given to it by Simmons, still not believing what had been happening. The drone had quickly become the unofficial mascot of the insectoid cruiser they had rechristened the James Donovan in honor of the former XO and his heroic efforts to save the crew. One of the crew had made unsanctioned ship patches featuring a stylized Indigo with oversized eyes, firing particle beams and flying across the star field with flames shooting out of the drone's ass. Within 2 weeks, the entire crew had the new patches on their uniforms, and they had started taking pictures with an oblivious Indigo while pointing at the patch. It became a tradition to post the photos on a wall of the large chamber they converted to crew quarters, and those who had not had a picture taken yet were teasingly hounded and ridiculed until they finally did. Navarra had initially been furious when he saw the patches appearing on the uniforms, thinking it was disrespectful to the memory of Jim and the rest of the crew that had perished, and he wanted to order them removed. It was Davis who disabused him of that notion, pointing out that it was the crew's way of maintaining morale despite their difficult circumstances. Simmons was the primary caretaker of the drone and had become fiercely protective of it as she continued to bring it food and water daily ever since they had boarded the ship. The drone had finally left the air vent after a week and was now basically her pet. It followed her everywhere and refused to leave her side, becoming her shadow and a crew favorite. It was so attached to her that it even accompanied her to the makeshift lavatories and would stare at her with its large black eyes as she went to the bathroom, according to the rumors. Pushing aside the image of the creepy drone perving on Simmons as she crapped, Navarra returned his thoughts to the current food situation and felt crushed by the weight of his responsibility. For over 50 days, he had managed to keep the crew alive and evade the insectoids. The cruiser was still on its course, and they had air, water, and power. What they needed was food. He had been relying on the crew to be able to eat the sweet aphid excrement that they seemed to make prodigiously when the rations finally ran out, and now they stopped producing for some reason. "This is not good, Davis. Has there been any progress on the protein synthesizers? I thought the engineers were trying to hook those up to the cruiser's energy systems." Davis replied with bitterness, still not over the loss of the chief engineer he had served with for many years. "They will run out of power soon, Captain. The engineers have not been able to successfully integrate the LifePod protein synthesizers to the power systems, something to do with an incompatible energy matrix or whatever techno-babble they like to use instead of admitting they are incapable. If the chief was here, I bet we would be eating steaks and sipping whiskey right now instead of bemoaning the fact that we are not going to be able to eat bug shit after all. He would have figured out a way to make it work." "I know what you mean, Davis," he replied softly. He was a genius and a credit to his trade. Respect for the fallen. "Respect for the fallen," Davis intoned, sadness passing over his grizzled features before he reverted to his neutral command face. Davis was the one who convinced the chief to go on the mission, and he felt responsible for his death. "What are we going to do, Captain? Cutting rations is going to bottom out whatever morale the crew has managed to hold on to." Navarra looked at Davis's face, his own internal worries becoming magnified as he saw the same concerns in the XO's eyes. "I really don't know, XO. We are thousands of years away from the nearest planet, and I was relying on us being able to eat the aphid stuff." He paused to tap on the beeping data pad before looking back at Davis. "The medic said it has most of the amino acids and minerals we need and that we could eat it for months before any serious deficiencies manifested. I expected our rescue to arrive by now." "They are coming for us, Captain. We just need to hold on a little longer," Davis said, his utter belief that the Republic was coming from them evident in his words and tone. Navarra smiled slightly at Davis's statement and the faith with which he said it before picking up the data pad he had silenced. "Half rations will get us 10 more days. Thirds will get us almost 20 days, and none of the scientists can figure out why they stopped shitting," he asked as he offered the data pad to Davis to see the calculations. Davis took the pad and replied as he started to look down at the figures on the data pad screen. "As of right now, Captain, no. They have water and light, and they are still eating the algae, so they can't figure out why they stopped. That reminds me, sir, Simmons wanted to talk to you." Navarra sighed wearily and leaned back against the wall, trying to smooth out his beard with both hands before nodding his head. "Get her in here and please stay. That drone creeps me out when it looks at me with those black eyes like it is staring into my soul." Davis smirked at the captain's confession. "Maybe it is wondering what you taste like, Captain. I bet it's thinking your meat will fall right off the bone after a low and slow cooking session." Davis continued, smiling widely at his morbid joke as Navarra shuddered in disgust. "Just get Simmons in here, Davis. I knew you would be the first to go cannibal on us. There is no way in hell you are going to end your 22-year career starving to death when there are junior enlisted and ensigns around to eat." Davis barked a rare laugh, his eyes twinkling with glee as he reached down to grab the communicator off his belt. He spoke into it, telling Simmons to come to the chamber they were in before toggling the hatch control to have the cruiser's version of doors slide into its recess within the organic wall. Davis put on his command face again, and Navarra continued to go over the crew reports as they waited for Simmons to arrive. A couple of minutes later, she rapped on the wall outside to announce her presence before stepping through the hexagonal opening, her pet drone in tow. The drone peered into the room and looked at both Navarra and Davis before it scurried in and started clinging to Simmons's leg as she came to attention. He could see the 6 delicate fingers of each claw clutching her trousers, and the drone stared at him with its large, unblinking black eyes as her face became red with embarrassment. "Simmons, at ease. Do whatever you have to do to get it to stop looking at me, please," Navarra said, trying not to avert his gaze as the drone continued to peer into his soul. He half expected pinwheels to appear in the drone's black sorcerer eyes, like the villains in the old 20th century cartoons his grandparents would put on for him to watch when he visited them as a boy. "Thank you, sir," Simmons replied, softly patting the top of the drone's head before using her hands to push it gently off her leg. The drone looked up at her quickly before it went behind her legs and started grooming itself. It rubbed its two thorax legs over its back, head, and antennae, before passing the legs through its mouth parts. Navarra hid his revulsion of the drone, inwardly shuddering as he saw little cilia-like things inside of its mouth moving and cleaning off the leg hairs as it continued to groom itself. He did not want to offend Simmons unnecessarily, nor did he want the crew to find out that he had a serious phobia of insects, especially 1-meter-tall wasps that like to kill mammals like him. His fear started when he was around 5, and his older sister Emily used to terrify him with bedtime stories of the insectoids eating human children alive. She would tell him they lived under his bed and only came out at night when it was dark. She would then deactivate the nightlight and leave. Left in a pitch-black room, he would be too terrified to leave the bed to turn it back on, afraid an insectoid would be waiting under his bed to grab him and eat him. This went on for months before their mom found out that his sister's stories were the reason why he was wetting his bed almost every night. She was grounded for months and had to do all his chores as punishment. The stories ended, but the fear remained. "Thanks, Emily. You really screwed me up," he thought sarcastically before realizing Simmons was looking at him with an expectant expression. He focused and nodded for her to begin as he placed the datapad Davis had handed back to him on the desk and silenced it. "Sir, I was thinking about the aphid issue. I am wondering if maybe they need the presence of a drone or some type of care from drones to maintain their production and symbiotic relationship." Navarra looked at her with surprise, not expecting her to say anything related to the aphids at all. "What are you thinking, Lieutenant?" he asked, genuinely curious about where she was going with this. So I used to date a guy who was a big terrarium freak," she replied, her cheeks reddening slightly as she blushed at the mention of dating. Or maybe the terrarium freak. He couldn't tell as she hastily continued speaking. "He went away on a job for a few weeks, and he made it very clear I was not to introduce any food to the terrarium. He had ants and other insects in there, and it was pretty cool to look at, to be honest with you. After a few days, I couldn't help myself anymore, and I dropped a tiny bit of honey inside of it just to see what would happen. The ants went apeshit for it, and then they started dying like 2 weeks later. The drone had started grabbing at her right leg again, and she paused to push its claws away, looking back at Navarra apologetically before continuing. Anyway, he came back and all the ants were dead. I confessed to giving them honey, and he flipped out on me. Apparently, the ants had a symbiotic relationship with the aphids they farmed for food, and adding honey disrupted the entire delicate balance he had lovingly created in the ecology of the terrarium. The aphids died from lack of care, and the ants died from starvation afterwards. I felt really bad about the whole situation, and I felt even worse when he broke up with me. The tool had the nerve to claim that this meant I was unfit to be a mother." Navarro wisely kept his mouth shut as Simmons huffed indignantly at the memory. Davis was behind her, and he looked at Navarro with a bewildered, "What the hell?" expression that almost made him crack up in laughter. Rubbing his right hand over his mustache and beard to hide the smile that Davis's look caused, Navarro tried to put on a thoughtful expression as he looked to the side towards a wall to give himself time to recover. He clamped down on his mirth and looked back at Simmons, nodding for her to keep talking. "Well, I am thinking maybe it is the same here. I want to bring Indigo to the aphid farm and see what she does. Maybe she can do something to get them working again." She finished, a hopeful expression on her face. Navarra gazed at her approvingly for her creative thinking regarding the food problem. He shared a questioning look with Davis, who shrugged in a "what have we got to lose" gesture before turning back to Simmons and addressing her. "Simmons, I like where you are going with this. In fact, I am curious about this myself. I will go with you." Simmons looked surprised, and then she smiled as her eyes flashed with relief. "Thank you for listening to me, sir. I thought you would dismiss my idea as nonsense." Navarra smiled at her in return before responding. "Perish the thought, Simmons. Your theory is the best idea that has been proposed so far. Let's grab some of the biologists, and we'll all head over to the farm." He stood up and moved out from behind the piece of debris that had been turned into a table by the engineers and turned towards Davis. "I'll be back, XO. Keep an eye on the bridge for me." "Aye, Captain," Davis replied as they all shuffled out of the small room and entered back into the main command chamber that they called the bridge. Davis immediately walked over to the strange bench on the raised platform and sat down while Navarra and Simmons walked towards one of the tunnel exits. The drone placed itself directly behind Simmons, and Navarra was forced to watch his feet to avoid stepping on the drone as it rambled behind her, constantly searching the floor and the walls with its antennae. They walked through a series of tunnels, collecting 2 biologists they could find along their way as they headed towards the aft section of the ship where the aphid farm was located. He returned the salute from the guard posted outside the entry. He had a guard posted there since they took over the ship to prevent any unauthorized access. He did not want anything or anyone accidentally screwing something up with their backup food supply if they needed it. Navarra made a call over the comms for the other scientists to meet them there before they stepped through the 6-sided opening and into the very humid and warm interior of the farm. The large bay was covered in algae, and there were thousands of aphids swarming over the algal overgrowth and eating it with smallmouth cilia that skeeved out Navarra. There were thousands of bulbs scattered all around, bathing the algae with the light they needed for photosynthesis. They all lingered near the opening and waited for the other 3 scientists to arrive. Indigo went off on its own and into one of the stall-like structures that the aphids congregated in when not eating. It came back out cradling an opaque, jelly-like substance within its claws and walked back over to them on its other 4 legs. It presented the sweet aphid droppings to Simmons, and she took the blob of jelly from its claws. Navarra watched in fascination as Simmons brought the substance to her face and pretended to eat it, moaning as she faked taking bites out of it. She then handed it back to the drone, thanking it for the delicious food in baby talk as it pointed its antennae at her before reaching up to take it. The drone took it in its claws and inspected it closely with its eyes before rapidly consuming it. Navarra felt a queasiness in his stomach as he heard the drone slurping the substance through its mandibles, and he pointedly ignored the drone as it started cleaning the gelatinous mess off its claws. The other scientist finally arrived, and they all started discussing what Simmons had mentioned to the captain. The conversation quickly became very heated as the biologists took sides and argued with each other. 2 of the biologists dismissed her idea out of hand, while the rest thought that it was possible, and that her theory was as good as any they had. Navarra zoned them out as they argued and watched as the drone went into a different stall and came out a few moments later with another mass of jelly within its claws. It placed the jelly within a bin that contained the last of the harvest the crew had collected before the aphids stopped producing, and went back into the same stall. Navarra walked deeper into the bay and positioned himself behind a water tank to see what the drone was doing without it seeing him. He peeked out and observed the drone as it went to the wall where an aphid was clinging to it and started stroking the bulbous bottom of the aphid. After a few moments of stroking, the aphid would suddenly deflate. The bulbous bottom would disappear and a mass of jelly would fall out of its ass and into the waiting claws of the drone. The drone turned the mass of jelly all around and inspected it closely. The drone then took a tiny piece of the jelly and placed it in front of the aphid's small head, dangling it in front of the feeding cilia. The aphid's mouth cilia grabbed the small piece, and it disappeared within the small opening. The drone then turned around and brought the jelly to the bin outside and dropped it in. "It's milking the aphids," Navarra realized, as the drone did the same thing to another aphid, receiving more jelly after stroking the aphid with its claws, and then feeding it a tiny piece. He took off his wristcom and set it to record before quietly placing the wristcom on top of the tank to film the drone milking the aphids. He then slowly retreated, not wanting to disturb the drone. Navarra returned to the others who were still arguing, seeing Simmons stare at them with a flustered expression as she leaned against a pillar off to the side of the biologists. He waved at her to get her attention, and he put his finger to his lips before smiling and giving her a thumbs up. He gave her the stay signal and then pointed to the stall before walking to her. He leaned in close and whispered to her, "You were right. The drone is milking the aphids and getting food from them. I have my wristcom recording it now to see how it is being done." She leaned her head back and smiled widely at him before silently mouthing, "I knew it." She then turned around and made a rude gesture towards the biologists that disagreed with her. They were still arguing with their colleagues and did not notice her two middle fingers, and he tilted his head towards the exit. They walked over together, and Navarra quietly told them to stop arguing and go outside with them. As they were leaving, the drone came out of the stall and looked around for Simmons. It quickly dropped the mound of jelly into the bin and made a beeline for the group when it saw that they were leaving. Figuring the drone was done, Navarra went back for his wristcom and then joined the rest outside the bay. He quickly activated the playback from the recording he took of the drone and played it. Smiles broke out all around, and the biologists, who vehemently disagreed with Simmons and the other two, quickly apologized for being jerks. They now had a food source again, and Navarra felt his own tension melting away as the others started discussing the stroking Indigo was doing and theorizing on why it was feeding the jelly to the Aphids. Davis's voice came over the comms, practically screaming, "Captain, a Hive ship just flashed out of null space alongside us. They are matching our course and speed." Navarra shared a horrified look with Simmons before they both bolted towards the bridge, the drone scrambling to keep up with them as they left the stunned scientists behind. Panic engulfed Navarra as he ran after Simmons. "Why can't you give us a freaking break?" he screamed in his mind, the question directed at the universe and every known deity worshipped by humanity. Thoughts filled with anger and resentment followed, this one directed to the Republic he so loyally served and lost his family for. "Where are you? Why haven't you come for us yet?"